Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're excited to chat with you about how to go about writing the personal statement. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So give me just one moment to do that, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Um, we've already done our introductions, but I wanted to just kind of give you a general overview of how this session is going to work, and how we've organized it tonight. I'm going to just start with a very brief overview of what the purpose of statement should do. And then each of us are going to provide you with a specific tip. And then we're going to give you some time to do some generative writing. Our idea here with this workshop is that you'll leave this session with material for writing your own statement of purpose, and hopefully you'll find something of use to you. We'll end with some final advice that we have for you, and then we'll open it up to a Q&A at the end. Now, this Q&A, we're happy to answer questions that you might have about the statement of purpose, anything that we discussed tonight, but we're also happy to answer any questions you might have specifically related to our program. So feel free to drop your questions into the chat as you go, or to hold those questions for the end. Generally speaking, though, I think that we were just talking before everybody entered that the statement of purpose, or the statement of purpose, is sort of its own genre. It's kind of this requirement that not everybody is even really certain what to do with it. In general, I would say that the goal of the statement of purpose is really threefold. One is to tell us who you are as a writer and who you are as a thinker. Um, it's going to answer the question, what do you want to do in the program or with an MFA? And it's also going to address why this program, why this is a good fit. And so our tips here are kind of geared towards answering those three questions. But really, what programs want to see when they are reading your statement of purpose is that you have a very clear sense of what your creative goals are going to be. They want to have a sense that you know who your work is in conversation with, or what kind of themes you're interested in exploring in your work. They want you to demonstrate why you're interested in their specific MFA program. So show that you have done a bit of research. And they also want to know how you're going to contribute to the community. So what qualities you might have that you could bring to the program, that would be of benefit to the community, and how you would add to that. And I'm going to start with the first tip here, which is make it personal. I don't know how to make it personal. Um, this is always a tough a tough tip to navigate, because I think it's important to remember that it is a personal statement. A lot of times, people writing personal statements tend to affect a very formal tone to demonstrate they are, in fact, a serious applicant. When I think it's just as important to let your own voice be known and let your own voice be heard. So you want to begin thinking about maybe a story that you can tell, a story about yourself. And this is where you want to think carefully about the difference between personal and confessional. We don't necessarily want to write a confessional purposes statement, but we do want one that is personal, that makes you stand out as an applicant, that gives us a sense of your history, or gives us a sense of your background. And so you want to begin thinking about maybe specific moments in your life that shaped that, or specific questions that you keep returning to again and again as a writer and as a thinker, that have lent themselves to your own investigations in your writing. And I think it's okay to think about a story that you want to tell. But I think it's important to remember that this story needs to do work within the context of the personal statement itself. So, I think that what you want to do with a story is really illuminate your motivations, anchor the trajectory of your study, and maybe set up the theme of your personal statement of what that might be. And you also want to keep this story pretty tight. So I think, like, 2 to 5 sentences at the start of your statement is plenty to begin investigating the kinds of moments or questions or themes that are going to sort of serve as the thread throughout your personal statement. So the prompt that we have here for you tonight with regard to this is twofold. And so what I want you to do right now is simply come up with three separate sentences. I want you to think about just three specific moments, and I say moments, I mean anchored in a specific time and space that reveals something about your passion or your purpose as a writer. And these should be specific ones. And they should be from your adult life. And I want to say they should be from your adult life because readers are interested in who you are today and who you are now. They're less interested in who you were as a child. And I'm also going to say that it should be specific. It shouldn't be something so general as I've always loved to read and write. I think your readers of the Statement of Purpose assume as much because you are applying to an MFA program. So I want you to just come up with three sentences and don't overthink it at this point. Just write three separate sentences that capture some element of something that reveals anything about you as a writer and try to anchor them in specific moments. I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to do that. Maybe about 30 seconds to finish up these three sentences. Now, remembering that the statement of purpose is to talk about your intentions, the trajectory of your studies and your goals and your fit with the program. It is not to narrate a life story. However, I think a brief, vivid moment can really reveal maybe a turning point in your thinking, or a question you've been wrestling with, a shift in your perspective, or maybe even themes that you're interested in exploring in your writing. So, what I want you to do with this next prompt, and I'll give you a bit more time for this one, is to select one of your sentences, just one of them. Think about one that might have uh, some deeper meaning in terms of your writing and the kind of work that you do. And I want you to write 1 to 2 paragraphs of a narrative, focusing on a moment that tells the reader something important about your passion and purpose as a writer. Try to write this as a single scene, remembering that a short single scene can do more than a sweeping life summary in your statement of purpose.
So as you all are writing, Melissa put a suggestion in the chat. If anybody wants to put a sentence down that they wrote that they feel really good about, feel free to share it in the chat with others.
one more minute to wrap up this writing prompt. I'm a terrible timekeeper, I admit. I said one more minute and then I didn't really keep tabs on it. So that felt like a minute to me. So I'm reading in the chat a couple of your starting points, and I think some of them are really lovely. I'm looking at skies right now in the darkness of my newborn's nursery. I lay on the daybed and wrote whatever I could in the quiet moments between feeding them and sleeping. I think that's a really lovely starting point. It's very specific. It's anchored in a time and place, and it immediately orients us to who you are as a person, a writer who is also a parent. I want to say just a couple of things, and then I'm going to pass it off to Melissa for our next tip. And that is, the goal of this workshop is to really give you the building blocks for your essay, for your statement of purpose. You'll have to figure out the glue that's sort of holding these pieces together. But I'll say that these stories that you tell need to lead somewhere meaningful. So you have to tell us why it matters not just to you, but to your understanding of yourself as a writer. And really, you want to think about these stories as a door into the rest of your statement of purpose. So now I'm going to hand it off to Melissa, and she will provide us with the next tip.
Okay, hey everybody. Everyone who came to this event is a genius, which is great news. I'm so glad to know who I'm speaking to in this moment. My spiel has to do with the fact that the statement of purpose needs to convince the faculty who are reviewing your application that there's a good fit between you as a writer, an artist, a student, and the program itself. And so I'm going to make I have two prompts. I don't know how I wound up with two. I'm just lucky. But they are related. They're both aimed at kind of this fit proving element of the statement of purpose. And so I'm thinking about two things when I talk about your job of proving the fit in your statement. One is I have to know who you are as a writer. And I'm going to make the case that that means talking to me a little bit about the conversation you're joining. So, proving that you know a little bit about the literary history of your genre, um, so that I can believe that you understand something about the conversation that you're preparing to join, that you want to get better at participating in through attending an MFA program. And so this means talk to me a little bit about who you read and how those writers and those texts have shaped the writer that you have become, the writer you're becoming, right? The writer you hope to become. And I'm going to suggest that at least some of those writers and texts are contemporary. I say this because we often hear, I'm extremely influenced by Keats, or I'm extremely influenced by Edgar Allan Poe or Jane Austen. And I'm not mad at those guys. They can be in the story, right? But faculty will have a more confident feeling that you're prepared for graduate study in poetry or fiction or creative nonfiction if it's clear to them that you've been reading some modern and contemporary writers as well. So they won't have to start from scratch, kind of training you to the sort of last 30 years of the conversation that you're trying to join, the people that you'll be in direct conversation with at the moment. So who have you been reading? How have those texts and writers influenced the writer you've become so far, and your sense of what you're trying to accomplish? And then the second thing about fit, right? You're part of the fit, we're part of the fit. So the second thing is, what do you know about the program that you're applying to? And how does your experience, your temperament, your goals as an artist and a writer, what you want to accomplish in the next 2 or 3 years, how do they connect with what we're offering? Because for faculty, the saddest thing would be to feel that we had invited a writer or a student into a program and we were unprepared to help them do the things that they wanted to do. Fit matters to us mostly for your sake, right? Mostly for our sense of responsibility for not inviting you into the place and then disappointing you when it comes to what we can help you do. So faculty are looking for evidence that you understand what you're getting yourself into with that particular program, and that what you're bringing to the table and what you're hoping to get match with what we can offer you, if that makes sense. Yeah. Will you go to my prompt? Let me say real quick before we start writing a little bit. Um, Sometimes students ask if they should mention a particular faculty member. I want to say I'm not completely opposed to this idea, but it represents a little bit of a risk, and I want to tell you why. I want to be honest about why. One, sometimes people go on sabbatical, sometimes they move on. If you've focused a lot of this section of your statement of purpose on working with one particular faculty member, and I'm reading your application and I know that they're leaving, then that may make me doubt the fit, right? So it's fine to mention somebody or mention a couple of people, but I wouldn't make it seem like unless I can work with, um, you know, a particular faculty member, I'm going to be heartbroken and my plans dashed. Definitely don't make it sound like that. I think the other part of the risk is if faculty member A is reading it and you're super, super excited about faculty member B, they might start to feel a little neglected. So I think my suggestion, more than focusing on particular faculty members, is look at the curriculum, right? What kind of courses have regularly been offered or are sometimes offered in the curriculum that directly speaks to you? So, given what some folks have been saying, for example, you might talk about how we teach queer poetics here in the MFA program at UNCW, and that would be an important part of the kind of study that you would want to do in the program. You might want to talk about the lyric essay rather than talking about working with Michael Ramos, although I swear to God, if he quits, I don't know what I'll do. You can probably depend on him being here. So you figure out what's going on more than who's doing it. And I would say I would suggest focusing on that. Okay, now we can really move to my prompt. Okay, first one, situate yourself in the conversation, right? 1 to 2 paragraphs about your literary influences. Be sure some of them are contemporary. What kind of writing are you doing or would you like to produce? And how have writers or texts in your genre shaped your own current work and aspirations as a writer? So 1 to 2 paragraphs. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to get started on this. Um, One thing to keep in mind as you move through these is if you can connect the dots, right? If this can be connected to the story you told in some way, so much the better, right? Now I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes.
So, Melissa, we have a question for this particular exercise, and I wonder if you'd like to answer it. If the contemporary literary influence is someone who has only published one or two books, does that reflect poorly?
No, absolutely not. That's perfectly fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One other question about this. What do you think about including books from other genres?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. I think it's good if there are writers from the genre in which you're applying, but for example, UNCW um, is a program where we require cross-genre study and encourage kind of hybrid thinking. So particularly if you want to talk about how you read across genres or work across genres, I think that's fantastic. Like, tell the truth. Tell the truth.
They're such great questions. I'm just going to ask this one more, or maybe two. What if the literary influence is a literary magazine that influenced you?
Well, that ain't gonna hurt you at UNCW. That's for darn sure. And I don't even mean you have to say I've been heavily influenced by Ecotone. I think that if you talk about reading literary magazines, you're proving your literary citizenship, right? You're proving that you're actively participating in the current life of literature in America or internationally. I love it. Yeah.
Thank you. And then just, are there any red flag influences that you would stay away from mentioning?
I don't think there are red flag influences, although obviously things are complicated sometimes politically, culturally, right? You could be aware of those things as much as you can. But I think it's just, I think what I've already said basically, that it's troubling if the only influences you have in your genre are from 200 or 300 years ago, which doesn't mean it's bad to have classic influences. They just shouldn't be the only ones because it makes us feel, makes faculty feel like you're not invested in the development of that genre or in the contemporary writing space, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And I'll save any other questions that come up for the end.
I think since we've been chatting a little bit, I'm going to give one more minute and then we'll move on to my second prompt. Okay, Sarah, can you give me the next one? Okay, so now imagine your creative and professional future. Write 1 to 2 paragraphs in which you detail your genuine goals and how you believe the MFA and where, when possible, this particular MFA, I don't mean this particular MFA, but the one that you're applying to will help you to achieve them. So, couple things I want to say real quick before we get started on this one. One, in this particular MFA, for example, we've got the publishing laboratory, which is a place where, alongside creating your own masterpiece, you can learn all aspects of the editing and publishing process at both an in-house magazine and an in-house independent book press. So if you didn't talk about that a little bit, if you are applying to our MFA, we might think it was a little weird, right? And so what is it about the particular MFA you're applying to? Like, what is the gem of what they've got going on? What is at the center of their offerings? And what do you know about that and how it connects to your own professional goals? And then I just want to highlight the word genuine here, right? Whenever we are applying to something, there's this terror that there's something specific that the person who gets to make the decisions wants to hear from everybody. And if you don't say that thing, you don't get in. I think you need as much as possible to put that kind of terror aside, and you need to tell the truth about what you're actually trying to accomplish because this is going to help ensure the best fit on the back end. And also, everything else is guesswork, right? When you tell the truth, you can let go of all kinds of anxiety. You know how to tell the truth and you know how to tell it clearly and convincingly and well. Everything else is a kind of pose, and it's really difficult to do that kind of guessing when you don't even know the people that are going to be evaluating what you're writing. So when I say genuine, think about and talk about what it is you really want the MFA to help you accomplish, and how the particular MFA that you're applying to, given what you know about it, is likely to help you do that. So I'm going to give another 5 minutes, 1 to 2 paragraphs to think and talk about your goals and how they might be served at an MFA program that you have in your mind, perhaps. I'm going to give about 1 more minute. Okay. Somebody in the chat is asking uh, if the word limit is really short, which this is a tight piece of writing, right? They're not giving you a ton of space, sometimes 500 words. Um, I would write all these things and then you're going to work on compression. I would also see what is where the most heat is, where you've done your best writing, where you genuinely had the most to say, and you can weight the elements based on that, right? Like not everything's got to take up the same amount of space, particularly if you're not coming up with something really compelling in response to that. I think it's gonna be hard to avoid hitting all of these in one way or another, but you get to make the decisions about how much time and space to devote to each of these, partly based on like genuinely what you really have to say about those things, right? But yeah, compression after you draft is going to be a big part of this process. Okay, I'm done.
All right, everybody. Thank you for your time today. I've got the next section, which is curiously titled Bring the Groceries. When I was enlisted in the Navy, I had a senior enlisted person who asked me that question. She's like, "What groceries are you bringing?" And then she went on to say, she's like, "My job is I'm a cook. And when we think about this thing that we're doing in the service, we're a community here, and everybody has to bring something to the table, as it were. So what are you bringing? What would you put in a meal? What are you going to bring to nourish the community?" And the same is true when you're coming to an MFA program. Um, what what this part of the prompt focuses on what you are offering. We don't want to read a bunch of people who want to take from us. Like nobody wants to be in a one-sided relationship. And I think that that's important to point out. Melissa and Sarah both said use the word inviting. Like we're inviting you to come. We're inviting you to dinner, as it were, if we want to carry on the metaphor. And we want to be a part of this community, but we want to know that we can rely on you, that you're going to show up, right? And so when I say bring the groceries, it could be hard skills like I know how to do X, Y, or Z. It could be that you're a really generous reader and you like to give feedback. There is no set answer for this, but it's basically thinking about the things that from your non-writing life are going to augment the program that you're coming to because all the MFA programs, we believe heavily in literary citizenship, right? Like you're going to be in a cohort with, in our program, 22 people, or give or take, maybe around 60 people. You're going to get to know each other pretty well in workshop. Like you want to be able to count on one another and be able to show up for each other. Um, yeah, I can save the next one for a little. Well, yeah, yeah, we can just go to the prompt. That's all I have to say about that. All right. So what I want you to do is just write one or two paragraphs in which you discuss how you hope to contribute to an artistic community and how you're prepared by past experiences, temperament, etc., to make such contributions. So we'll give you a few minutes to do that, and then we'll go get back to each other. Actually, I hate doing this, but I forgot something to think about. Like talking about going off what Melissa said about fit, when you're doing your research, we a lot of MFA programs will have like we have two programs, Young Writers Camp, where kids will come and do 2 weeks in camp. So maybe you've been a camp counselor and you really like that thing. We also have a program where we go into the local schools and they're generally at-risk schools, and we teach creative writing to kids that don't get that in the curriculum. We have other opportunities to get involved and plugged in. So think about that also. We'll do another couple minutes. Go ahead and start wrapping up that final sentence. I think we can just stop there for the exercise. All right. So back to Sarah, right? Sarah, you're muted.
Sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute myself here. Um, Final advice. Michael, Melissa, do we have any final advice here that hasn't been mentioned? This is the time to offer it.
I have a little bit of parting advice is just remember that good writing is good writing. I think that's important to know this. Like, don't overthink the statement of purpose. It matters. It really does. And the reason it matters, I can tell you from my own experience, when I'm looking at applications, I'm going to look at the statement of purpose and see what it says. Is it well written? If it's well written, odds are the writing sample is going to be really well written. And so I'm going to be engaged. Conversely, if the statement of purpose is too impersonal, too distant, doesn't have a lot of focus, is just not a very solid statement, it's going to make me doubt the quality of the writing sample. So just think about those things. Like it's just if you're a writer and you're wanting to be a writer, you got this. You can figure it out. Don't overthink it. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think I would just highlight, remember that you want, like, if you're applying to a writing program, you want everything that you give them to be a good piece of writing. And so, one of the ways of thinking about that, after you've done all these pieces, right, we don't want to have inadvertently encouraged you to write like a list. So, think about transitions between these sections and really remember that you want a through line. So, whatever story you've told, you want that to be connected to the influences you discuss, and you want the influences you discuss to be connected to what you say about your own goals as an artist, right? And you want what you say you're going to bring to the table to have some connection to all those things. So you're developing a through line, you're working on transitions, you're working on compression. You want the thing to be vivid, engaging. I want to be able to hear your voice. So you're just writing a tight little essay, right? So think about that in the end, particularly when you're revising. Use what you know about how to write a tight little essay to get this thing sharpened up.
Yeah, just to add to that, Melissa used the word voice, and I think voice is really important. It's an opportunity to convey your personality in some ways. And I always caution students against writing too formally in the statement of purpose, though it should be serious. So it's actually kind of a tough thing to navigate in terms of affecting, this voice and your kind of informality of your voice, but also treating it very seriously. I'm just going to add, and this might just be me. Um, I tend to read the writing sample first. That tends to be the first part of an application I read. I mean, usually when we're reading, when we're delivered the packet of the application, I tend to read the writing sample first. And I also believe the writing sample is the most important part of your application. So sometimes that puts people's minds at ease in terms of writing the statement of purpose, to know that the focus is really going to be on, is that writing sample showing promise? So
Mhm.
that's something to think about. The statement of purpose is only one part of your application. It's a very important part, but it's not the only part. And maybe thinking about that will take um, some of the stress out of the process for you.
Yeah, we can even say that we have a an algorithm, right? Like the elements of the application for us are weighted mathematically, and the writing sample is weighted much more heavily than the transcripts or the statement of purpose, right? So it's about that writing sample above all else for sure. Do we want to see if these folks have any remaining questions about literally anything?
And also, do you think it'd be cool to invite everybody to turn on their cameras at this point so we could like actually be with real people because that's we're talking about community. It might be nice to not see screens.
Big reveal.
Yeah, but some people are like not presentable.
I mean, that's fair. You don't I said invite. They don't have
I'm
to.
not going to say how somebody might be unpresentable, but if you want to show your faces, we welcome it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was such a great workshop, such a great, so many amazing generative elements here that I think everyone will be able to be a little bit more specific than maybe they thought they were going to be when they were writing their personal statement before this. I know that the chat was kind of blowing up the whole time, and I'm so grateful for having three of you who were generous enough to jump in. And so rather than scrolling back through the chat to see what we missed, because you all did such a good job of answering questions as we went, I just want to invite people to ask their questions. You can raise your hand and you can ask any of our presenters right now. There were some people who were wondering if they could save the chat. And I think that you should be able to go to the very top of the chat and click on the three little dots. And then the very top thing that comes up is save chat. So hopefully you all that want to save it are able to do that. But does anybody have a question they'd like to ask?
I am seeing in the chat one thing that I could speak to a little bit was advice for answering about teaching, especially if you don't have traditional teaching experience. So I've got two thoughts about that. If you have any non-traditional teaching experience, right? Like if you helped a professor run a workshop, if you have participated in a community writing group where you sometimes took the lead, you taught kids at summer camp, anything that you've done that you can connect to your desire to teach and sort of your like that you've done some thinking, you have an idea about what it takes to be a good teacher, I think you can talk about that. Those are transferable skills. I also think it's fine to talk about good teachers that you've had, right? What you observed in their teaching and how you hope to model yourself after those skills and capacities.
And I think too, like this is not an MBA. Like you're not applying to an MBA. You're not applying to a JD. You're not applying to med school, right? We're not looking for you to have like we don't expect you to be teachers right out the gate. Like that's our job, right? We're think about this. We're inviting, this is your chance to get an invitation to be our peer, our future peer, right? Like we want to think about this like we're going to train you to be teachers. We just want to see that you actually like people maybe and have a desire to teach other people how to find their voices like you have.
Yeah, somebody had asked a question in the chat earlier about whether or not you should bring in previous experiences as an accountant, a baker, a candlestick maker. And I think you can sometimes even use that as a way of thinking sort of parallel to teaching as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be straight up teaching experience. To use Michael's example, you're not expected to know how to perform surgery when you're applying to med school. So I think that kind of any skills you have learned in your past that might be useful skills in the classroom might be worthy of mention.
Thank you. And it looks like Andy has a question. Do you want to ask?
Hi, yeah, thank you. Apologies for the recorder practice going on in the background of my house right now. I'm curious, this was such a great structure. I'm so grateful to all of you for sharing your wisdom about this. I'm curious if this sort of structure for a statement of purpose, if you feel like this translates to things like applying for a fellowship or a grant, thinking about if we maybe aren't applying for a fully funded MFA, if this is the kind of general structure that you think other organizations are looking for, or is this more specific to an MFA?
So I think it's specific to the statement of purpose, but obviously some of these elements are transferable to other kinds of applications. I think fellowship granting and like funding granting institutions are often pretty specific in what they're asking you to do. So, for example, you've got to describe a project, right? But some of these other things, your influences, what you're trying to accomplish as a writer, those absolutely could be transferred to another kind of application. Yeah, probably not wholesale, but like you could mine it for parts. What do you think, Sarah?
Um, I was reading I'm going to admit I was reading the chat and I lost track of
I
you.
just want backup on this. She's asking about could
Oh, yeah. Could it be
yeah,
applied to a fellowship? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Sorry.
My idea was you can probably mine it for parts depending on
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could mine it. I mean, first of all, you always want to write to the prompt. And if they've given you a specific prompt, which they usually do, you always want to first and foremost be sure you're answering that question. And
that
so,
goes for statements of purpose too. If they're asking you to do something specific we haven't told you to do here, follow the directions.
yeah.
Sure.
But in some ways, your story is your story. Your influences are your influences. The research you do is your research you do. So I think that you can really, once you have one of these kind of written in draft form, you can tailor it to fellowships or grants or whatever purpose you're really applying for, so long as it is writing specific.
Yeah.
Thank you. It looks like we have a question from Nia. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. You're welcome to ask your question, and then we'll go to Lori next.
It's pronounced Nia, but the question is specifically about the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. I know that there's a requirement for the assistantship essay. Is there anything that you guys look for in that, or is that lesser, like way less, I guess, if we're using like the mathematical terminology
Right.
within the application?
That's a great question. So that essay is not actually weighted in the algorithm for acceptance. What we use that essay for is when it comes time to make a decision about, so we've accepted a group of people and we're making offers of assistantship. So we're making offers to folks to be TAs in creative writing or TAs in the publishing laboratory or the other opportunities we have. So you're in. We're reading that and trying to figure out what kind of support to offer you, what kind of professional opportunities to offer you. So my major suggestion there is to make clear which of the opportunities is most attractive and most interesting to you, and then talk about the kinds of experience or professional goals that you have that relate directly to that opportunity. So relate to teaching in the creative writing classroom, or relate to working in our publishing laboratory, or other opportunities that we're using that assistantship essay to identify are putting someone in charge of our Writers in Action program, which puts graduate students as teachers in community programs, elementary and middle schools, and other places where they otherwise wouldn't receive creative writing instruction. We're looking for a coordinator for that. And so I've got a box I can check on my form where it's like, have they had community organizing experience? Have they been in the classroom with young people, right? And so whichever of those opportunities you want to be considered for, you're talking about why and you're talking about what you're bringing to the table.
And I'll just add to that,
Thank you so
enthusiasm
much.
is
Oh,
important.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were going to talk.
That's okay.
Go ahead. I was just saying enthusiasm. I mean, even if you maybe you don't have publishing experience, but you're very interested in a publishing assistantship, for instance, I think using your previous experiences in other field to show how you have some of those skills that might fit within the publishing assistantship, and also indicating your enthusiasm for doing so, is really beneficial to you as well. I mean,
Yeah.
what I'm not looking for is a list of your accomplishments. A list of your accomplishments is not the place for a statement of purpose or for those assistantship essays necessarily. I think it's good to highlight some of your accomplishments, but really I want to know how you're going to put some of your skills to practice and what some of your goals are as well.
Yeah, that enthusiasm thing. Emily Smith, who's the director of the publishing laboratory, particularly when we send along a list of possible um, publishing student assistants to her, she won't pick anybody who doesn't seem really excited about it, because we're choosing colleagues at that point, right? So people that we're going to be working with many hours a week on projects that are really important to us, right? So. Yeah, she won't pick anybody who doesn't seem like they really want to work up there. Yeah.
Thank you. Now we can go to Lori and then we'll do a question in the chat and then Jamie.
Hi. Um, I have a question about when you're talking about the books that you like to read. I mean, the truth is that I'm a huge YA fan. Not fantasy, like contemporary realistic. So like E. Lockhart, and I feel that some of those YA authors are, you know, they're literary. But one of the programs specifically that I'm applying to was basically like, we don't want any YA samples. We don't want anything YA. And I'm submitting short stories, which I feel good about. But yeah, I'm a huge YA person. Is that like, is it a dirty word? I didn't think it was, but it feels like it is.
I love
First
that.
question to you, Lori, is why you want to apply to a program that's not like YA when you love YA. That would make me think it's maybe not a fit if that's what your heart is drawn to. And they look down upon YA or not interested, or maybe they don't have the faculty to support YA, then I would throw it back to you and ask you why you want to apply to that program. They may not be a good fit for you.
A YA fiction workshop in the spring. Nina DeGramont is teaching. Yeah.
Yes, I'm aware that there are like two schools specifically for YA. That's not the only thing that I write. Number one, in terms of a writer, I'm really speaking more as a reader because because they were so YA is not the only thing. The programs that do YA are not fully funded. So
Yeah.
if you have unlimited money, you can go write YA at those programs, but
Yeah.
that's not the case for me.
Yeah.
But I hear you. I think that, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know sight unseen. You are a good representation of your program. Now I've seen your faces and I'm like, oh, I can see these people. But if you don't do that for every program, it's really hard to know based on their page that they write, even if you research it and try to dig in what what they're about. And maybe somebody who wrote that is just a snob who doesn't like YA and that
Yeah.
person. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there are some programs that are not interested in teaching genre writing, that this is not something that it's not a place that's going to support that kind of writing. And that is, you can sometimes get a sense of that from websites. You can take a look at course offerings that usually are publicly available to see what kind of courses are offered. And that's why it's really important to do your research. Who are the faculty there? What kind of books have they written? Do they write in any particular genre? Because I can tell you, it's, it can feel, I remember this from when I was applying, like you just feel so eager and desperate to get into a program. You're like, I'll go anywhere. But if you land in the wrong place, that's not going to really support you as a writer, then that's going to be more problematic in the long run for your development.
I do want to acknowledge what Lori is saying, right? Like, if you're applying, if you need to apply to fully funded programs, right? That's a real and pressing need for a lot of people. They can't go unless they get into a fully funded program. I think there are 60 or so of them now, right? And so we've got a lot more variety at our disposal in terms of picking the right fit than we once did. Uh, so yeah, I just want to acknowledge that real material concern sometimes puts a limit on what we can do. Back to the main thing about your question, Lori, is I would say if you're talking about why you love those writers and those books, and you're making clear that they're literary to you and that they influence you for particular reasons that you can speak eloquently about, and if, and I'll say this goes for any genre, like subgenre, if that's not the only kind of writing that you're citing or you're talking about, then I mean, I think you're going to be fine. I wouldn't write about it in the application for the one where they poo-pooed it straight out.
Yeah, for sure. Leave it out of that one.
As long as you're writing smartly and compellingly about what you admire in this work and how it influences what you do. I just think we can get into so much anxiety and angst when we're trying to anticipate what it's okay for us to say. And it's so much easier when we rely on what's true and saying what's true in our own voice, with our own skills. Although, again, I always understand that money comes into play in these situations. So I get that the pressure sometimes comes from there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Lori. In the chat, Ashley is wondering, a few MFA programs that she's looked at don't have a slot for a statement of purpose on the application portal, but they do have a space to upload a second document under a resume or a writing sample. Would you upload a statement of purpose in this case? It seems odd that they wouldn't want this.
I would ask, right? One thing it's good to keep in mind, before Sarah took over as MFA coordinator, I was MFA coordinator for 8 years. I welcomed questions. I got lots of them. The MFA coordinator, the MFA director, if there's a program assistant, that person is there to answer your questions. So I would recommend against providing any materials they don't specifically ask for. If there's something that you want to provide that they're not asking for, or you have any kind of confusion about what it's okay to provide, write to somebody and ask.
Thank you. So then we'll go to Jamie and then we'll go back to the question from the chat. Go ahead, Jamie.
Hi, thank you. I kind of have the opposite problem, and there's other people here I see that do. I'm 67 and I've done so many things in my life. I've been an artist, I've been a teacher, I've been a scientist, and a veterinarian. Then I had a brain infection, and that actually made me a good writer because I write simply, not some erudite stuff. I don't know what to, I can't, I don't even know how to make a resume that's, uh, I can do it about creativity, but not about, I finally have the nerve to, I started submitting things, essays and creative nonfiction is what, and I'm writing about a very taboo subject, about what I think about euthanasia with pets and how we could do animal hospice care. And even people who are in the publishing industry that start asking me about things end up telling me, don't you think I did the right thing? I feel like I have these hurdles to get over, and I don't know how to distill that into something simple. And I was also an artist, and the things I've written, I have art about, and I don't know if it's okay to put that a little in my writing a little piece of art that's about that story.
Mike,
Anyway,
if you're still hanging around, I wonder if you might be a good person to address some of these questions in terms of like your subject matter and whether your approach to a particular subject matter might be challenging to describe when you're applying to an MFA program, because Michael is a veteran and writes about his veteran experiences in a way that doesn't necessarily jibe with the dominant narrative about those experiences. What do you think, Michael?
I think you're right. Thank you very much for that endorsement. But I think too, Jamie, that's part of the challenge, right? That's part of the challenge of the statement of purpose. That's what we're looking for is can you distill these things? And somebody asked a question earlier about how to stand out, and it's really you're thinking about the story that you can tell. Now you have so many stories. Great. Choose the one that is going to make us want to study with you, right? Like I think that's worth saying. And we Melissa and I have talked about this a lot. Like we're tired of the Oliver Twist um syndrome that's around writing and publishing where we're like when you get to publish you're like think would you please be like no we want to study you like publishers should want to publish your work if it's doing what it's supposed to be doing right we don't have to come from this like will you please help me it's like hey I've got these stories I would like to come study with you. Can you take me to the next step? So thinking about like this idea about creativity, like for me, like I think about hybrid work and alternative approaches to things. Like so, like I'm really into music. Like when people ask me about my book, I'm like, oh, I structured it like an album. Like it's you've got your intro, your interlude. Like there's a whole narrative arc in an album. Well, there's a whole narrative arc in an essay collection. Like that's how I think about those things. So think about like that. Like I think that just that idea about creativity this is just like you're maybe thinking about it in terms of like reincarnation. This is your next iteration of your creative life. Does that help?
yes, it does. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I think I would keep leaning on tell the truth, right? Like, what is it you really want to do? Tell it with confidence that it's worth doing. I can hear in your voice that you think that this is important and that you have something specific and unique to say about something that feels urgent to you. That's people see that, they feel it, they admire it. Um, you don't want to go to a program where somebody's gonna, their feelings about what you're writing about are gonna get in the way of their capacity to teach you and help you accomplish. So, like, you are gonna have no choice but to go where there's a tight fit. You need a tight fit, right? Don't go anywhere where they won't take you. Talk with confidence about what it is you really want to do and why it matters to you and let the chips fall. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, you know,
I really want to, I have to go to a program because my memoir, which is full of all this, does not, my craft does not rise to the occasion of my ideas. My ideas are great, but not my craft. And I need help, but I also can provide a lot of editing and critique for
Right.
the other people that are there.
Well, what you're saying is, I have a story that's urgent to me that needs to be told, and I want to prepare myself in terms of craft to tell it because it matters, right? Craft is going to be what gets you an audience for this urgent material. That's what you should talk about. Absolutely.
I loved
Thank
Melissa's
you.
word
That's very,
urgent. I think urgent is an important word for all of you to think about what feels urgent to you as a writer. And Jamie is listening to you talk. I'm already seeing a through line in your statement of purpose. You're a veterinarian. Now you write on this very taboo subject that how do you write about difficult things while, keeping your values intact and challenging people. I mean, this seems like a statement of purpose material right there. I think it's important to remember that a statement of purpose is not a biography, though. Like as Michael said, choose a focus. It needs to be a focused, and it needs to be focused towards your, artistic journey and what you hope to do within the program and after you graduate.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you. I am urgent. I'm
Hey,
67.
You
Says I
are,
will not.
we're all urgent. I like that. That needs to be on a hat. I am
Or
urgent.
public Pablo Picasso said that don't ever leave for tomorrow what you don't want undone when you die. And I will not die unpublished on my desk. So there you go. Thank you all.
right on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the question and for all of you for weighing in. Um, there's a question in the chat. Should we talk about any of our publications in our statement of purpose, or should we leave that for the CV? And if there are publications that you're not particularly proud of, should you leave it off the application entirely?
Okay, I said, yeah, you're welcome to curate, right? I'm not reaching all the way back into I'm not talking about what I published when I was 20, right? Like you get to curate that CV. If you published a poem in the Rat's Ass Review and you don't want to include that on your CV or in your application materials, leave it off. What was the other part of the question? Oh, should you talk about your publications in your statement of purpose? I mean, I don't think the statement of purpose is where you want to I don't think you want to spend that real estate. If they're giving you 500 words and the CV is already doing that work, I would leave it over there.
I would say unless you have a very significant publication, like you've already published a book and it's representative of the kind of work you're continuing to do, then perhaps. But if it's a single story or a single essay or a single poem, I would leave that off for sure. I wouldn't waste the real estate. And yeah, you're curating this, your experiences. So definitely don't put anything on there that you're not proud of or you don't want to bring to the attention of your readers.
No shame to the Rat's Ass Review, which very well may exist. And I mean them, I'm casting no shade on them if they do.
They do exist. Yeah. So we have a question. Yeah, we have a question from Rose, and that may be the last question we have time for. Go ahead, Rose.
Hi, thanks. So this was sort of touched on earlier. I was kind of wondering, in terms of talking about like working with faculty, if it's more beneficial to talk about faculty members in the programs you're applying to and maybe like the work that they do that you're more interested in, or professors that you've worked with in the past, like during undergrad, and like the work that they did and how that like informed your current influence and tastes and everything.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I never even thought to talk about that. For sure, if you've had mentors, particularly if you have a very important mentor, someone that you've already studied with, and you want to talk in some detail about how their work has influenced yours, how their teaching has influenced yours, that's totally legitimate. Early in the program, I talked a little bit about how it might be a risk to focus too much on specific faculty that work in the program in case they've moved on. It's not verboten. I wouldn't get super grumpy about it, but I think you're better off focusing on programs that are offered, curricular offerings that you've seen on the website, things that looks like they specifically teach and do. But yeah, your mentor is a completely legitimate thing to talk about in your statement of purpose.
I would add just a brief caveat to that, which is when you're focusing too heavily on mentors and on faculty that you'd like to work with, you can sometimes take the focus off yourself. And so, I mean, it's important to remember to only talk about mentors or faculty so long as you are bringing it back to your own vision and your own purpose and your own sense of yourself as a writer.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Something that might help everybody, because it sounds like a lot of people are trying to wrap their head around how to corral all their material, which is funny to me because this semester I'm teaching a class called Curating the Details. So every time Melissa said that word, I've kind of giggled to myself. If you guys are familiar with brevity, so it's short work under 750 words. Don't look through some of the ones that are like maybe formally weird or doing cool things, which I love. I'm a weird writer, but like look for ones that look for pieces that are like about one specific thing and try to see if you can figure out how they got that much story in 750 words. or less sometimes, right? That'll teach you, or at least show you a way to distill a lot of what you're trying to do, how much real estate to give to something, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And just a plug for Andrea Firth, who's the editor of one of the editors for Brevity Blog. Every first Wednesday of every month, Chill Subs does an event with her where it's a time to submit together. So feel free to come to that and ask her questions. Not about MFAs, but about writing and submitting. Thank you. Thank you so much. You have been a wealth of knowledge, and I hope that this has been really helpful for everybody. We might have to have you back again because there were just so many questions. Thank you for sharing all your insight. It was a pleasure to do an event with you.
Thank you for having us. And if folks find that they have questions and they want to reach out to us, I would be glad to hear from you.
Same, same. Thank you all so much for your questions and your attention.
Yeah, same. Thank you very much. I'm also open to questions after this. I imagine they can get our emails from you at Chill Subs, right? Is that how that works? Or
Find us on our website.
oh yeah, also it's on our website. Forgot about that. I try to forget about it.
Internet,
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. And be on the lookout for the replay in your email in just a couple of days.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.